This video is not for children, so skedaddle, go away. It is an awkward video. I have been sitting here praying and asking God how to say what I say, but I've just gotten one too many emails from viewers who are asking about sexual content, what is and is not allowed. And the specific one was from a woman who was asking about self-stimulation. She has sons and of various ages, and this is something that the boys have have done. Do you see my awkwardness here? Always trying to think about what can be said here in case accidental ears listen. I also, in coupling with this video, have heard from women about what am I allowed to do with my husband? Am I not? Am I allowed to stimulate while my husband is doing, while we are together in the marital act? And so I talked to one particular woman recently and said, let's pull out the catechism. Because when it comes to the specific subject of self-stimulation, I remember when I was younger thinking that doesn't make sense. Why? It doesn't hurt anybody. Why does the church say that that's not acceptable? So again, but so many people talk about it. Now, many people will say, okay, all right, I realize it's wrong. I won't do it, but these examples of our children or, during the marital act is what came out. So when I pulled out the catechisms, it basically said in that area is that by masturbation is to be understood as the deliberate stimulation of the genital organs in order to derive sexual pleasure. And then it talks about the magisterium of the church. Well, I'll just read it. Sorry. Both the magisterium of the church, in the course of a constant tradition, and in the moral sense of the faithful, have been in no doubt and have firmly maintained that masturbation is an intrinsically and gravely disordered action. Again, I can see people going, how is that disordered? The deliberate use, here's the answer, the deliberate use of the sexual faculty for whatever reason outside of marriage is essentially contrary to its purpose. So God gave us sex for marriage, for the pleasure between a husband and a wife, for the procreative act. For here, it continues, for here, sexual pleasure is sought outside of the sexual relationship, which is demanded by the moral order, and in which the total meaning of mutual self-giving. So it's talking about mutual self-giving. When you do something like that, it's just about the self. So again, I repeat, the sexual relationship which is demanded by the moral order and in which the total meaning of mutual self-giving and human procreation in the context of true love is achieved. So that is what the church says about self-stimulation. It leads to the objectification of the act of pleasure in and of itself. And question as you want, pray as you want, but this is what the church teaches. This is what the Lord teaches in this desire for one man to give to his wife or for a wife to give to her husband. So if we connect, let me answer quickly what I said to this young woman about her sons is that, it had to be, as we read here, it has to be deliberate, it has to be intentional, it has to be something you know. But for most, specifically boys, girls as well, but specifically boys, it's almost always stimulation is going to take place accidentally. And then the boy realizes it's pleasurable. And so it's something that they will do. So the final sentence on that really answers the question about what do I tell my children? Well, of course, you have to be careful when they're young. You don't want to lead them into saying, well, only honey if you're 4 years old for the marital act. What's the marital act, Mom? Okay, so the church says to form an equitable judgment about the subject's moral responsibility, so her son's responsibility, and to guide pastoral action, one must take into account the affective immaturity. So basically, the emotional maturity, force of acquired habit, conditions of anxiety, or other psychological or social factors that can lessen, if not even reduce to a minimum, that person's moral culpability. So, look, doing God's will takes knowledge. We have to understand And just because you can sit there, as I did many years ago, that doesn't make sense. It's not hurting anybody. Well, then do your research. Find out why the church, why the Lord teaches what the Lord teaches. And then you just have to answer to God for it. So you can hear it, you can learn it, you can think it and go, I ain't buying it. Well, that's on you. That's between you and God. But be aware that when you do face God and he says, well, you did hear and you did learn, but you chose not to study, and reason that out. That's on you. I just wanted to put that information out there. Now, as for the question that woman had, what about self-stimulation while I'm in the marital act? Well, I have to tell you, first of all, I'm going to kudos to two priests. Father Mike Schmitz did his catechism in a year. And so if you go listen to day 307, he actually deals with this subject specifically. Also, Father Chris Alar, who does the talks on Saturday for Divine Mercy, he calls it going back to seminary, talked about this in his talk about the Ten Commandments. And what he said, and here's the way that I always explain it to people, makes it easier, is that the Bible, God, it showed in the Bible where when the man put his seed on the ground, God punished him. So basically saying remember it this way, the only place a man's seed can ever go is inside his wife's uterus, not any other part of his wife. Only the part that can allow for procreation. So other forms of sex are not allowed if the man is expecting to put his seed elsewhere. That's why sexual acts just for pleasure, which have objectified women, which have separated sex from giving life, has become so selfish, so self-centered. It's all about me, make me feel pleasurable. And then it's led to all these other moral perversions that we've had. So that one was easier to understand for me. So if the man is going to be stimulated by his wife, then in various ways, that's fine if the seed of the man ends up only in that part of her which can be open to life. So when it comes to the woman, however, Father Chris Alar taught specifically speaking on this, that a woman can be stimulated by herself or her husband by any part of his body in order to get her aroused and prepared for the marital act. So that has been a relief to many women because only 15% of women, last statistic I heard, can achieve climax internally. So it has to be external stimulation. So um, if a woman was laying in her bed self-stimulating all by herself, then it's a sin. But if she's with her husband and he is excited and this is something he wants her to do, or he's doing it for her, that's okay because it is to end up in the culmination of that act. So I hope this explains best. I will put a link in the video here to the videos, at least the one from Father Chris Alar, but it should help to explain. God is so protective of the marital act. He does want you to have pleasure. He does want you to connect. But when he knows if you save those acts just for that one singular person that you are to be made one flesh with for the rest of your life, the joy and the beauty that can come out of that is so much greater than things that can happen just when it's an act of selfishness, just for the self and not self-giving. All right, well, awkwardness done. My words were a bit evasive, a bit slow, but again, I've got to be careful about who my viewers are and want to put out God's truth. I know this is a question I've gotten again and again and again and again. So I thought I'd address it. I'd love to hear your comments. If you have a question that you want me to make a video about, because you're like, look, I don't want to talk about it, email me, Christine@breakfastwithbacon.com, and I will answer your question online. Because if you're thinking about it, chances are someone else is as well. I hope this helps. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. Thanks again for watching this informational Bacon Bit. And as always, remember to live your life sunny side up.